has been since June of last year, since I recorded an episode of this podcast. So perhaps it doesn't even count as a podcast anymore, I'm not sure. Anyway, June of 23, and now it's February of 24. But a lot has happened in that time, personally and in the world and everywhere else, and there have been many times where I'm like, should I record something about this? And I never did, but here we go. So we're jumping back in with something, with a thought that I've had many times. I've often read of this concept of servant leadership. You often hear that in the context of like a marriage or in a business or something like that. Obviously, it means all sorts of things to different people, but I am been trying to wrap my head around that, what that actually means, and not just as a sort of platitude, an excuse for a guy to be a jerk, to be a dick in a marriage or something, or for a boss to be a dick to his employees. Second cup of good coffee. Maybe too much, but we're going to go for it. Also, by the way, I'm filming this on the Insta360X3 with no external mic. This is just using the onboard mics on the camera. I'm curious to see how it does. It's supposed to be, obviously, the X3 is supposed to be an improvement all the way around on the previous model. So we'll see. We'll see how the audio sounds. It's pretty quiet in this room. Maybe a little echoey. A lot of hard surfaces, but we'll see how it does. So if it's total trash, I apologize. If it's serviceable, if it's pretty good, that's great. The less you or I or anyone has to do to record something like this, awesome. Anyway, so the whole concept of servant leadership combined with these two thoughts kind of came along separately, and then I realized, there's actually a connection here. So there's this other idea of, guys out there that talk about being alpha males, like they think they're alphas. And finally, I kind of resolved for myself, at least, what those two things have to do with each other and the absolute bullshit that is the concept of being an alpha male. So I'll start digging into that. So the alpha male thing, it's usually guys who are, I say usually, at least in my experience, usually guys who are unmarried, who think they're alpha males. I'm an alpha. Well, let's dig into where that comes from. So primarily that concept comes from the wolf research, that the alpha of the pack, that you're an alpha male. But now, what they've come to realize, after, I think it was 40, 50 years ago that term was coined, now what they've come to realize is that wolf packs are families. It started out the thought that the alpha male was the one that outcompeted all the other males, was the one that was stronger, more aggressive. It was like, I'm an alpha male, and so I run the pack. It turns out that's not the case at all. Basically, they're families. An alpha male is not the term that's even used anymore. It's the preeminent, it's the father of the pack, essentially. But what we're talking about are families. So let me dig into this a little bit. If you are and there are a couple of examples I can think of with this, but if you're a guy who maybe you fathered some children with one or multiple women, maybe you slack off on your child support. You're not even with these women that you've fathered children with. You think of yourself as something special, as an alpha male, but you have children that you don't even support properly. You have children out of wedlock that you disregard, or that you're like, I see them every other weekend. Now, let me be clear here. There's a distinction between a father who went into marriage, had children, the marriage didn't work out, either because maybe you screwed up or maybe your spouse screwed up. I am divorced. My kids are 100% of my focus, 100% of what drives what I do. That's different. If you're a man, woman, whatever, if your marriage didn't work and you are trying your very best to be the best parent you can be to your children, that is not the situation I'm describing here. All of this is just within the context of almost exclusively men who aren't married, have never been married. Maybe they've fathered children, maybe they pay child support, maybe not. But they describe themselves as alpha males. Well, an alpha male, and this is where it ties in with the concept of servant leadership. An alpha male is the head of a family. An alpha male is I'm going to jump from wolf community to human community. An alpha male, using the terminology of like a wolf pack, which isn't even a term used anymore, let me repeat that, but using that term alpha male in the context of a wolf pack, that male, and in fact the alpha female, again using outdated terminology, is the one responsible for the welfare of his entire pack. He is the one responsible for making sure that every member of that pack is healthy, making sure every member of that pack gets the food that they need, making sure that every member of that pack, if they are injured, is accommodated until they can heal and return to full function. They are the head of a family. And they are the ones that, at the risk of their own wants and needs and desires, make sure that every member of that pack is taken care of. And the successful alpha males are the ones that have the most successful packs because they ensure the well-being of every member of their pack. So let's draw that around to the concept of servant leadership. You usually hear that term, or at least I've usually heard that term in the context of the Christian context, that a servant leader, that the man of a family should be a servant leader. And I never really understood that. I never really could wrap my head around that all that well. But I think now I've kind of got a handle on it, at least for myself. What does it mean to be a servant leader in your family? As a father, as the male head, not head of a family, but as the male half of the couple that runs a family. And I try to parse that I'm trying hard to parse that in a way that that illustrates that it is a male and female duo that in a truly successful family work together to make that family successful. So what does that mean in the context of so I am remarried now. I've got 2 stepkids and my own kids. And at least within the context of our family, we refer to them as our kids. I try hard at least not to distinguish between my stepchildren and my children. They are my kids. They are my children. Which is not to try to take away from the role that their biological father plays. I do not try to take that role on. I'm not trying to replace their father. But I also try hard not to differentiate in how I interact with any of my kids. So what does it mean to be a servant leader within your family? Well, if you're a guy out there and you think that that it means that your word is law, and your wife, your woman, doesn't have any say in the relationship and how things run, well, then you're a fucking idiot. That isn't how that works at all. Maybe that's how it works in your family, but it's not a success. It doesn't lead to successful families. So what does servant leadership then mean? Well, servant leadership means that you are willing to put the welfare of the other members of your family ahead of your own, or at least to give them a very high priority, sometimes at your own expense. You ensure that your children are clothed and fed and taken care of and given the best experience you're able to provide for them, often at the expense of your wants and desires. And the same thing is true for your spouse. You are there to ensure that your wife, to do whatever you can to ensure that your wife has a fulfilling, successful life of her own. And it's, the role then is to ensure the welfare of every member of your family to the very best of your ability, financially, personally, emotionally, spiritually, that you are there to best serve the needs of your family. And there are times, especially with children, where what best serves your children's needs is not what they want. It is what you know will serve them best in the long run. And that's where the whole duality of servant leadership comes in. You are willing to sacrifice your wants and desires for the betterment of your family. But sometimes, especially with children, what you know is best for them is not what they want. So you have to offer them leadership, loving, caring leadership. And in the best of all possible worlds, you try to describe to them, you try to explain to them why what you offer them as leadership is in their best interest. They may get it, they may not, but you're going to do what is best for them. And knowing that at times what is best for them comes at the cost of your wants and desires. So tying this back into the whole alpha male thing, if you're some dude, 30-something-year-old guy who barely pays his child support, neglects his children, calls your ex-wife a bitch, basically is I hate the word toxic, but you're a destructive force in your children's lives, especially. And you're a toxic, destructive force in your ex's life because you're bitter and angry and you don't want to pay child support. Well, you, of all people, definitely do not get to call yourself an alpha male. No, you're arrogant and you're childish. And if you're a young man, 20s, hell, even into 30s, not so young, who isn't a parent, it's all about you, it's all about your selfish desires, everything is just in service to your whims, and yet you call yourself an alpha male, well, you're not. An alpha male, if we're going to use that outdated terminology for the purposes of this video, an alpha male is someone who puts family first, first of all, is the head of a family. Second of all, is primarily concerned with the needs and the benefits of his children and his wife. If you don't even have children and you don't have a wife and you're just out there playing the field, well, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing per se. I think it's a little shallow. I think it's not the most fulfilling life you could lead, but okay. But you don't get to call yourself an alpha male. because A, means you don't actually understand where that term comes from, and B, that the term itself is outdated and not in use anymore, because it didn't actually apply to what it was used to describe. So, servant leadership means that you are willing to offer the very best of what you can offer, spiritually, financially, emotionally, to your family. And you take the hits. You take hard hits, and you take extra care, and you make extra effort to provide for your family in the best way possible on all fronts. Not just, oh, well, I put a roof over their head so those little shits do it. No. You have to offer the best of yourself. If you want actual leadership, if you want to offer actual leadership, then you have to offer the best of yourself on all fronts, spiritually, emotionally, financially, present, being physically present in their lives. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're too arrogant to do that, if you're too petty to do that, well, maybe you should revisit. Maybe you should get some help. Maybe you should get some therapy. Go work on that with someone. There are these men's groups out there that, they offer, like, oh, be a strong, dominant male. I haven't done those programs, but what I can see of them from the outside is that they're perpetuating this myth of, like, oh, that the strongest men rise to the top, and you should dominate your family and be dominant to your wife. No. Do you function from a position of strength and leadership in the ways that you can? Yeah. But you do that in conjunction with your wife, because you need her to provide you as much support as she can, just as you provide as much support as you can to your children and to her in return. So, to all of you, there's a very specific picture I have in my head, like, to any of these douchebag guys out there, that you've got children that you barely see and that you begrudgingly pay the minimal amount of support to, and that you basically don't have a place in their lives. If that situation is a result of, if you are doing the very, very, very best you can for your children, even if you're divorced and your children aren't near you, you're not able to see them often, but if in your heart you do the very best you can for them and you offer them the very best of yourself, okay, you're doing what you can. But if in your heart everything is grudging support, and if in your heart you resent them, and if you're in your heart you're happy that you don't get time with them, man or woman, well then, sorry, you're not much of a parent. You sure as hell aren't any sort of alpha anything, alpha male, alpha female. It is as much about the intention behind your action as it is the action itself. And your children will feel that. So if you're some dude who's in his 30s and you think you're an alpha male because you're some sort of badass, or you think of yourself as a badass, well, sorry, no, that doesn't apply. If you're out there doing the very best you can for your children, for your family, if you're married, for your wife, if you're divorced, at least you're not dumping your venting your spleen on her. Yeah, if you're out there trying to do the very best you can, then yeah, you're a father. Alpha male terminology aside, which is a very outdated concept now anyway. If you describe yourself as an alpha male, you likely, 99% likelihood, you're not what you think you are. You're just arrogant and you're just filled with ego. So grow up, do better, be an actual male, be an actual man who puts the needs and desires of his children and his family first. That is servant leadership, and that's as close to the outdated term alpha male as you're going to get. So, I have tried to present that with some clarity, but I've probably screwed it up. Let me just say, if you're a man or woman out there, I'm specifically thinking about divorced parents, you're doing the very best you can by your children in what may be an unpleasant situation. Or if you're divorced and you and your ex work pretty well together and work together to do what's best for your kids, then great. Good for you. It's a shitty situation, but if you're trying to do the very best you can by your kids, and even by your ex to a certain extent, then good for you. If you would like to have more time with your kids and you don't, I get that. Hopefully that means that you are still doing the very best you can for them. And the situation just doesn't allow you to do more. Well, keep trying. Keep trying to find that way to more connection with them. However, if you're unmarried, if you're divorced, and it's all done with hate in your heart, it's all done with resentment in your heart, then get some help. Unpack that. Go to therapy. Explore, find your way to a better place for your role with your kids. So, that's me rambling on. Hope you got something out of it. Give me your thoughts. Hopefully I've expressed this. At no point in time am I trying to speak badly of anyone, man or woman, husband or wife, divorced parent. If you're doing the very best you can for your kids, well then keep going. Hang in there. And I wish you the very best. I wish your kids the very best. If you're 180 degrees from that, if you're some douchebag, what's the term for, if you're not living up to what your kids need, if you're not providing this, if you're a deadbeat dad, a deadbeat mom, then it's time for you to change. I hope you find that path back to integrity. I hope you find that path back to a better version of yourself. All right, that was a bit serious, but that's what's been on my mind. It motivated me enough to do a video for this. Thanks for watching, and here's to more coffee.